The captured colonel entered the POW camp like any other officer, clean coat buttoned, gloves folded, boots polished. But the intake table stopped when an American sergeant opened his field bag and found a black notebook marked with village names instead of battle positions. A German clerk standing nearby turned pale before anyone questioned him, and when Patton arrived, the officer was still claiming the papers proved command, not crime. The first conflict began when a German colonel named Victor Rahm was brought into the American POW intake yard with 6 captured staff officers and 2 enlisted clerks. He handed over his sidearm without argument, placed his belt on the inspection table, and kept his leather field bag close until an American MP ordered him to release it. The sergeant opened the bag and removed maps, gloves, a folded scarf, a shaving tin, and a small black notebook wrapped tightly in oilcloth. Rahm reached for the notebook before the sergeant could open it, and that movement made 2 MPs step between him and the table. The interpreter unfolded the first page, read several village names, then stopped reading aloud and asked for the camp captain immediately. The captain arrived expecting code sheets or command orders, but the notebook contained dates, population counts, officer initials, and short phrases written beside rural villages already marked on captured maps. One phrase appeared more than once: refusal cleared. A German clerk who had arrived with Rahm saw the page and stepped backward so suddenly that he nearly knocked over a crate of prisoner cards. The captain separated the clerk from the officer group and ordered him taken into the administration hut before Rahm could speak to him. Rahm demanded the notebook back, saying it contained lawful discipline records from anti-partisan operations and belonged with his officer papers. The captain refused and ordered the rest of Rahm's belongings searched again in front of witnesses. Inside the field bag lining, an MP found torn carbon copies of reports listing armed resistance, but several entries carried different numbers from the notebook. The clerk, questioned separately, said those reports had been rewritten after civilians were shot near 2 villages during retreat. The captain ordered Rahm removed from the ordinary officer enclosure and placed under armed watch near the intake shed. Rahm protested that he was a captured soldier and should not be treated as a criminal before any hearing had begun. The captain sent a message to headquarters stating that a German colonel might be connected to civilian reprisals, falsified field reports, and witnesses already inside the camp. By noon, the intake yard had changed completely, because the clean uniformed prisoner who arrived demanding officer status now stood beside a table covered in papers that made every guard watch him differently. Subscribe for more forgotten German POW stories like this one. The escalation began when Rahm's adjutant tried to pass a folded note to another officer during afternoon count. An MP caught the movement, seized the paper, and carried it straight to the administration hut, where the interpreter read a warning telling witnesses to say the villages were empty before Rahm arrived. The captain ordered every officer from Rahm's group separated and placed in different holding rooms before stories could be matched. Rahm called the separation an insult to military order, but the captain placed the intercepted note beside the notebook and said the order had already been broken by men trying to control testimony. The clerk was brought back under guard and shown the folded note without being told who had written it. He identified the handwriting as the adjutant's and said Rahm often used junior officers to rewrite field language after reprisals. The captain sent MPs to search the staff car that had arrived with the captured officers. Under the rear seat, they found a packet of burned field papers wrapped in oilcloth, with enough remaining text to show village names, supply times, and casualty summaries. One burned sheet listed civilians, laborers, and local officials under separate columns. The official report in Rahm's bag described the same place as an armed engagement against irregular fighters. That contradiction moved the investigation outside the camp fence because the captain contacted the local military government office and requested any witness statements connected to Rahm's route. Before evening, An American liaison arrived with 2 names of displaced civilians who had already reported executions after German withdrawal orders. Rom remained calm until he heard that outside witnesses might be brought in. Then he demanded to speak only with a senior American general and refused all further questions from camp officers. The captain did not argue with him. He ordered the notebook, burned papers, intercepted note, surrender card, and staff car inventory placed in a sealed evidence envelope. Outside, ordinary German prisoners watched officers being moved separately, staff vehicles searched, and MPs carrying paper bundles through the yard. Rom's status shifted in front of everyone without any speech. He was no longer just another officer waiting for a barracks number, and the men who had entered beside him were now afraid to stand too close. By nightfall, Patton's staff confirmed that the general would inspect the case the next morning, and the captain ordered Rom kept awake under guard until the evidence table could be arranged in full daylight. The major consequence came at sunrise when Allied investigators arrived with witness summaries from 2 villages named inside the notebook. The summaries described civilians gathered after surrender signals, men separated from families, and German officers ordering reports changed before the column moved west. Rom was brought into the interview room and seated across from the notebook, the burned papers, the intercepted warning, and the witness summaries lined in front of him. He looked at the evidence without touching it. He said every entry had been made during military operations and that civilians in a combat zone could not be separated from enemy support networks. The investigator opened the notebook to a page where Rom's initials appeared beside refusal cleared. Rom said initials proved responsibility for administration, not murder. The German clerk was brought in separately and asked whether Rom's initials were required before reprisal reports were rewritten. The clerk answered that no report changed without Rom's approval mark. That statement turned the interview room cold because the case no longer depended only on captured papers. Rom stood from his chair and called the clerk a traitor inventing lies to protect himself from Allied punishment. The captain ordered Rom restrained before he could move toward the witness. Outside, several German officers began shouting that Rom was being framed by clerks and civilians who feared revenge. An older enlisted German sergeant stepped forward from the prisoner line and asked to speak to the interpreter. He said rumors about Rom's villages had followed the staff column for weeks, and that soldiers were warned not to ask why prisoner counts changed after civilians were removed from roads. The captain ordered the sergeant protected and questioned away from the officer group. The consequence spread through the camp when more guards were assigned to witness rooms and Rom's staff officers were denied contact with each other. By afternoon, Rom's officer privileges were suspended pending review, and his name was removed from standard POW processing. He would not be assigned to the officer barracks, would not receive normal correspondence clearance, and would not be released into the compound population. The ordinary prisoners saw the change as soon as Rom was marched past them under escort. His coat was still clean, but the protection of rank had cracked because his own notebook, his own staff papers, and his own witnesses had pulled him toward a different kind of judgment. The reversal came when Rom was brought into the yard expecting Patton to hear his complaint about officer treatment. Patton arrived after the evidence table had been placed in the open, where German prisoners, American guards, and investigators could see the notebook, burned reports, witness statements, and surrender card together. Rom stood with his hands behind his back, trying to appear like a commander wronged by nervous camp officers. Patton did not begin with the accusation. He ordered Rom's surrender card read aloud first, including rank, unit, date of capture, and prisoner classification. Then he ordered the interpreter to read the village names from the notebook. The first names moved through the yard like inventory. The next names changed the faces of the men listening, because each was followed by dates, numbers, and the same short phrases written in Rom's hand. Rom interrupted and said harsh orders during retreat were not crimes, and that American officers who had never faced partisan warfare had no right to judge battlefield necessity. Patton picked up the notebook, opened it to Rom's initials, and stepped close enough that Rom could not look past him. The yard quieted as the interpreter waited. Patton said the words slowly enough for every man nearby to hear. "You're not a soldier. You're a murderer." The sentence hit the yard harder than shouting because it removed the shield Rom had used since arriving. Rom's expression changed for the first time. He tried to answer with rank, law, and command responsibility, but Patton ordered the interpreter to stop translating excuses and ordered Rom's rank tabs removed as evidence. Two MPs stepped forward, unfastened the tabs from Rom's coat, and placed them beside the notebook on the table. The reversal became visible to every prisoner watching. Rom had entered the yard demanding treatment as a captured officer, but he left the table classified as a war crimes suspect under protected investigation. Patton ordered the officer group searched for related papers. The clerk and sergeant kept under witness guard, and Rom transferred out of normal POW authority. No German officer stepped forward to defend him after the tabs came off. The evidence table remained in the yard after Rom was taken away, so the prisoners could see the difference between a uniform and the record carried inside it. The final irreversible event began before dawn when a transfer order arrived from Allied military government authorities. Rom was to be moved from the POW camp to a guarded investigation center where civilian witnesses could identify him in person. The captain prepared the evidence box while two MPs brought Rom from the holding room without his officer coat. Rom refused to sign the transfer receipt, saying he would not help Americans turn military decisions into theater. The investigator signed in his place and sealed the box containing the notebook, burned documents, intercepted note, witness summaries, surrender card, and removed rank tabs. The German clerk was moved separately under protection, with his statement copied twice and placed in a sealed envelope. Rom's adjutant was removed from the officer group after admitting he wrote the warning note, but claiming he had done it only out of loyalty. The captain ordered that confession added to the same case file. Outside, the prisoners were assembled for count as the transport truck backed toward the administration gate. No one announced Rom's charges to the compound, but everyone saw the evidence box carried first and the colonel brought after it. Rom walked without his coat, tabs, or staff officers beside him. The image changed what the camp believed about rank, because the man who had arrived as a commander now left as a prisoner separated from ordinary captivity. Patton ordered a new intake rule posted before the truck departed. All staff officers would have notebooks, field bags, reports, and vehicle papers examined before classification, and any prisoner tied to civilian crimes would be separated from normal POW processing. The order created a new witness file inside the administration hut. Over the next 2 days, enlisted prisoners quietly gave names, locations, rumors, and fragments of orders connected to other captured officers. Not every claim became a case, but Rom's removal broke the silence that had protected clean uniforms and dirty paperwork. When the truck pulled away, Rom looked once toward the officer enclosure. No salute came back. The gate closed, and the camp returned to count with a rule that could not be undone. Surrender could stop the fighting, but it could not erase what a man had ordered before capture. 3 days later, the intake table was used again, but every officer's field bag was opened more carefully than before. The captain kept a copy of Patton's order pinned inside the administration hut beside Rom's case number. When a new prisoner asked why notebooks were being searched, an MP pointed to the sealed evidence shelf and said nothing. The clean coat was gone, the rank tabs were gone, and only the village names remained. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WWII stories.